everybody. Thanks for joining me. Selena Roane with Close to Death, and this is powered by Fear Paranormal. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been live, so I'm kind of excited. I got a really cool guest tonight that happens to be, we have a couple of mutual friends, which is kind of making it the smaller world than I thought before. But before any further ado, Brandon Callahan, are you with us?
I am. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining me. So Stephen LaChance and Russell Keeler and a couple of our mutual friends are kind of telling me that book you just wrote was pretty amazing. So before we get into that, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Brandon Callahan from Kansas City. I do have just kind of a smaller group of, I guess, acquaintances, friends, or whatever it might be in the paranormal community. Over the years, I've kind of, I guess, kept most of my work a little more on the underside of things, not really right there in front of the public. We mostly do, we do a lot of research on potential locations, hotspots, things like that. We also have worked in quite a few homes with families as well that needed us to come through and kind of see what's going on. But yeah, Stephen and I go way back several years, and Russ, I've worked with Russ a handful of times, and he could not be a nicer guy. And so he and myself, he makes an appearance in the book, to be honest with you. So yeah, it was a pretty intense situation, and one I felt definitely warranted writing about for sure.
Yeah, and your book is called The House Where Evil Lurks, and then it's a paranormal investigator's most frightening experience. Is that correct? Encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah, Encounter. And man, I'm telling you, just the title itself makes, I'm not a real big reader. I'll go ahead and tell you I haven't read it yet. Sure. But the title alone makes me want to read it, because if I get into a book like with Stephen's The Uninvited, that's the only book I've ever finished from front to back, which is like a major accomplishment at 45 years of living, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, well, ADD's a bitch. But anyway, so, but that's the first book I actually finished reading. So if it can grab me and keep me involved, then more than likely I can finish yours. So I'm hoping to get a copy of it so I can start reading it.
Awesome. Yeah, I really think you would. It really a big thing that I wanted to accomplish was kind of bringing the reader next to us during the investigations and setting up equipment, what we're experiencing, feeling, and everything else. Of course, there's some history behind the location, but really one of the big things I wanted to accomplish was whoever's reading the book can really just kind of feel the location. And I think it accomplished that on a lot of levels. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. It was kind of a difficult thing. A lot of the stuff in it were really hard to write about, to be honest with you. But the way it turned out, Llewellyn was the publisher, and they've been fantastic to work with. And so yeah, they've published Stephen LaChance several times, and he's kind of been right there with me, just kind of saying, here's what to expect and everything else. So it's been a real help. But yeah, overall, it's been a pretty crazy experience for sure.
Yeah, well, so I don't want to give away too much of the book, but can you tell the audience a little bit about what started this whole thing and your experience? I know it was traumatic, but the things you're comfortable with talking about without giving too much away, in other words.
Yeah, for sure. Really, I was contacted via email. At the time, my group was involved in the Everyday Paranormal Network, and we were the Missouri affiliate. And I had friends in Kansas, Louisiana, all over the place. And Ken and Maria Lair, friends of mine that did the Everyday Paranormal Louisiana chapter, they had actually sent this person to me because they had found their website and contacted them, and obviously they were closer to me. So they kind of sent them to us, and I had spoken with who turned out to be the client's cousin. The client is actually deaf, and so he couldn't really communicate via phone. Unfortunately, I don't sign or anything like that. So Shane and I basically communicated via text message when I was down there at his house. And anyway, it got to the point where the activity in the home was so bad, he actually was hospitalized he was attacked and ended up with a concussion. He ended up kind of basically being bum rushed by some kind of energy, and it knocked him back to the point where he knocked himself out. He got a concussion and everything else. So we got down there as quick as we could, and just wanted to do whatever we could to help him out. Unfortunately, it kind of turned out, and I couldn't really blame him. He ended up leaving the home. So there really wasn't a lot of absolute resolution in the home in this particular instance, which I do regret. But at the same time, he's very happy, very healthy now, and hasn't had any problems ever since he left. And so really that, to me, that helps me sleep a little better at night, just having a little bit of unfinished business in that house. But it's not a place that I'd really recommend anybody live. So it turned out okay, I think. He's doing just fine.
Yeah, it's, some of these experiences that some of these homeowners do have is just, it blows my mind. And as much as they put up with before they get to the point where they're like, okay, all right, I can't do this anymore. We just had kind of a weird case recently that it was some kind of a pissed off energy that looked like to be somewhat of a Native American kind of origin, and it was feeding off the kids in the house and causing all kinds of discern and anger and things like that. And so far so good, after doing a cleansing and a blessing and a protection, on the house, I think that I'm hoping that it will hold. But sometimes, those entities like possibly you're talking about at this home don't want to let go of that property no matter what you do.
Yeah, we never got
band-aids.
Yeah, exactly. We never really got a chance to do much in the way of a cleansing. It's been very strange. A lot of like odd coincidences, things like that. That it's almost like this thing has some sort of protection over it, and it basically owns the house. I've got this. There's a small part in the book, just an audio clip that I was going through all of our audio and video and everything after an investigation. And I had actually announced we're all leaving the house, and I kind of slammed the door behind me to make sure all the recorders picked it up. And within a couple minutes of us leaving the house, the place literally sounds like it's coming to life. Moaning and whispering and talking, things being dragged across 2 flights of floors, a water tank in the basement just sounding like it's getting punched. It was insane. And so it was almost like the house sort of took on its own energy, and it was a very intimidating place to be, for sure.
Wow. That kind of, I don't know if you know a guy named Josh Hurd, but he's up in that area as well, and he's had similar things happen to him and his team that have lasting effects. And that seems to be the case, just like with Stephen's case, your case, Josh's case. It's like a team goes in to investigate, and the entity kind of just jacks with everyone's life. And that kind of was what happened to you as well. Your team, they were each individually picked on in a different way. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. People were actually attacked while we were conducting investigations in the house. Part of the, I guess, not to give all the details away, but one part of the climax of the book itself was myself being followed home. And there were several times, it was after each investigation, things in my mind got worse and worse. Sometimes after you leave a location and you've done your investigation, that energy can kind of stick with you for a few days, and after a few days it wears off or whatever. It just kept getting worse. And so by the time, by the time everything kind of hit the fan, it was a pretty bad situation, and I wasn't sure what I had gotten myself into or whether it was something I could get handled.
Right. Do you as a team, do you have a practice of possibly doing protection prayers before and after your investigations, or was that not part of your deal before?
I kind of leave everybody to their own devices. We've certainly discussed, whatever it is you need to do to be protected, you go right ahead and you do it. Right. I have my own practices, and unfortunately, the literally one time, I got lazy about it, is the time that I paid for it, and I haven't forgotten since. But it was just one of those things where I, just in a rush or whatever to get down there, And as I'm walking into the house, something just felt wrong, and I noticed. I was like, okay, now this could get interesting, and it did.
Good way.
Not anything I'm going to forget to do again. That's for sure. Because, and again, I respect anybody's religious beliefs, faith, or whatever it might be. And really, the guys that I was working with, we all kind of have different beliefs. And so I don't really have an absolute group thing that we do per se. But just to be strong in your faith, whatever it might be, I think is just an important thing, no matter what religious affiliation you are.
Exactly, and that after hearing your story and Josh's story and Stephen's story, and they're kind of, it's scary, but they're kind of have a lot in common with each other, and it's like a running theme with these entities to jack with people, and it's almost like the girl or the guy that didn't use protection the one time and they end up with a baby, you know what I mean? So it's like, but this is a kind of a little bundle of not so much joy that you don't want to take home with you. And so, when we're telling, new investigators, or when we hold public events, we don't make everyone do a protection prayer with us, because like you said, we're not going to push our beliefs on someone else. But, we definitely will encourage them to make sure their faith is in check with them when we do any type of investigation, because you never, ever know what could be showing themselves as a child, but may not be a child. And, you think, oh, this was an innocent investigation, and then things go crazy wrong, and then you're having to try and fix each problem that has spawned from that. So you would say probably protection prayer would be your number one thing, or protection in faith, or something to protect yourself would be mostly important.
Going into a home, going into a house, you don't know what to expect. The whole story could be, debunked, or, whatever it might be, but you might also run into something like what Stephen has dealt with, what I dealt with. It's not that common, but the thing is what a lot of people just don't understand is this is a psychological attack too. It's not necessarily a physical thing that you can see or feel right then and there. This thing works on no time schedule whatsoever. You wanted to do some parlor tricks for you while you're in the house. Well, okay, you might get a response, but the chances are a little later down the road is when you're going to get the real response, and that's something to where it's going to know your biggest fears, and it will play on that, and it will basically attempt to make you go crazy. And I mean, I've talked to people that have lost people that believe that something like that happened. And so it's a real scary thing. And until, anybody can say, well, I'm ready for whatever comes my way. But until you experience it or go through it, there's just no way you can anticipate that at all. No way.
What I would tell those people listening to you is probably be careful what you wish for.
Yep, exactly. Say it all the time. It's easy.
Because you may not be able to get rid of it with just a little blessing or a little, whatever they use, frankincense and myrrh. You may be a little more screwed than you had first thought.
Yep, exactly.
These things you can't see. So, it's hard to fight something that you really can't see.
Yeah, it is. And it gets to the point where, and, even now to this very day, there's odd things that kind of come up here and there. But in actually my next writing project will go a lot more deep into detail, but I've been doing a lot of work down in Oklahoma on Cherokee land. And I mean, you want to talk about just kind of a mystic place. It's just, it blows your mind that what you can see, what you can hear and feel. It's a place that I will probably go for the rest of my life, but at the same time, it hasn't been a place that I've always felt safe necessarily, You always, and the more you do this, the more investigations you're on, you learn to kind of be a little more in tune with your own body, your own senses. I don't consider myself sensitive or anything, but I do get feelings, and a lot of times, the evidence backs it up that I need to listen to those. I need to listen to my gut.
Yeah.
And so that to me is one of the most important things any investigator can learn is learn to trust yourself. And if something's out of place, guess what? Or something feels out of place, it probably is. So
yeah, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is. But the thing with the investigation that you're talking about, not everyone has to be considered or labeled as sensitive. From what I've been told by Chip and Dakota and all the psychics and mediums that I do know, the thing is, everyone has that ability within themselves. And the thing that we do is we question it so much that, we don't even know what we're really thinking or feeling because we're questioning our gut. We don't need to question our gut because that's where that comes from.
Right.
And so, we do rely on it. And you are the best piece of equipment once you're on an investigation. Once you open yourself up and calm down and not freak yourself out, you have to get a little seasoned because at first you're all like you're on coffee for 3 days and then you're like, oh God, and then everything's, paranormal to you. So
absolutely. And you get used to it. For the most part, you get used to it, but you learn how to trust yourself. And I think that is one of the biggest and most important things. At first, you kind of just go with the flow. Of course, everybody's seen it on TV and everything else. You realize so fast that it's just not that way. That's
yeah, it doesn't definitely happen that quickly.
Every team has their different methods and their approach and everything else, completely different than what you typically see on TV. Our group is no different. And so it's just one of those situations you've got to have good chemistry within your group. Yep. And you just have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to trust each other, and really just kind of have each other's backs. That's really what we focus mainly on is if you're uncomfortable, then, be somewhere else. Totally fine, whatever. But, it's one of those things. I've worked with people that I'm super close to, if not related to. So I'm very careful about the people that I work with.
Yeah, exactly, because that energy does definitely help things. I always, when we go on investigations, I'll change out the energy in a room. Like I'll, give one or two people in there a little time and do their thing, and then I'll change it up and switch the personalities around a little bit. But all of my team gels really well with each other, and the teams that I actually choose to work with on investigations and trust with those kind of things, we all work very well together. What are your thoughts on provoking? How do you feel about provoking?
Well, I do believe there's a time and a place. I'm not against it. Typically, I don't provoke inside of someone's home, just because there could be repercussions that may not necessarily be directed at me. Right. Although in this instance with the book, there was a lot of provoking going on, really after the fact that I knew he was no longer going to be living there. I certainly didn't want to make matters worse for him, but, and again, like you had said, be careful what you wish for, because I poked and I prodded and asked for, and I got, I got the video evidence, I got the audio evidence, and I certainly got the personal experience to go along with it. And I pushed buttons that, looking back and a little bit of hindsight, I shouldn't have done. Just that simple. But it is what it is. I say go out at your own risk. Everybody's got their own methods. If you're in somebody's home, just remember that somebody does have to live there and deal with whatever you might be stirring up. And one thing that I would point out always, I enjoy investigating in cemeteries, but I feel like that's a place that always has to be very reverent, and it has to be very respectful, because you're dealing with people that are typically more at peace, or should be anyway. But I also believe that there's a lot of quality investigative material that you can get by tracking families to cemeteries or whatever it might be. But I don't provoke in cemeteries at all, and I think for very good reason. It's just not a place that's really called for. But again, to each his own. I'm not here to judge anybody on their approach or whatever they want to do, but because I'll be the first to admit, and you can ask anybody I have worked with, ask Russ, I fly off the handle. I'm in there to do a job, and I'm in there to get something from, I'm there to get a reaction. And sometimes if that's what it takes, it's what I do. And I kind of take that my personal responsibility. So,
right.
But I think it through before I just, I may fly off the handle, but I try to at least think it through before I do so.
Yeah, well, there was one instance I can remember when I really try to not yell or provoke or whatever. But there was one time, me being an empath, we were at Villisca Axe Murder House, and I saw the shadow person stick his head out of the attic twice, and something just went all over me, and the mama bear thing came out, and I went off on him, and I was like, get out here and do something to me, and blah, blah, blah. I just was like going off, and normally that's not me, but man, I mean, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. That protectiveness came out, and I just was like, how could you do that? What a coward, and get your ass out here and touch, I'm bigger than you. Everybody's standing there going, oh God. But afterwards, I mean, I protected myself, I prayed, I did all that, but it just went all over me. And that's really the only time I've ever, freaked out or screamed at an entity. But so how long have you been in the paranormal? When did it start?
Well, I've always had an interest in it. I think just like probably just about everybody in the field. I personally have been in the field for about 7 years. So, I don't have the 20-year experience that it seems like he has. No, 6, 7 years, about 7 years now. And we got at it real hot and heavy right from the get-go. Got a lot of really cool places to check out, worked really well together, and I felt like we were pretty organized. I had what I felt like a pretty good game plan heading in. We had some goals in mind, long-term, big picture stuff. And I think, if you don't lose sight of the big picture, you eventually get there. It's just, if you're going for just a quick, have a good time or whatever it might be, that's fine. I would recommend that you kind of gain a little bit of experience before you kind of walk into people's homes and things like that. But, we're fortunate to come across some really cool places and meet some really cool people. But yeah, we've been in the field about 7 years now. So
awesome.
Lately,
go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I don't really, my approach isn't necessarily quantity. Again, I do a lot of research as to where I need to be. And really, to be honest with you, that research has so far taken me exactly where I needed to be. And I like to work a little more in-depth, not necessarily cases, but projects. I'm trying to actually find some progress here in the field, as opposed to, it's cool to catch an EVP, it's cool to analyze pictures and things like that, but I'm really looking for something tangible that, maybe can set us all going in the right direction, know where to look and what to look for and why. And that's something that I personally spend most of my time with.
Right. Well, so when you're using it, besides your body and of course your audio recorder, do you have like a favorite piece of equipment, or do you just are you kind of like old school and you like the camera and the audio recorder and stuff?
Well, I'm not much of a cameraman, and so I like
it's too hard to catch.
I'm just not. I am a gadget guy though, for sure. I mean, I'm the guy that probably has 5 things working at the same time. One's attached to my shoulder, one's in this hand, one's in this hand. But I love audio. The RT EVP is one of my favorite pieces of equipment because I love the immediate playback. It gives me an idea of what is going on without having to kind of stop everything and go back. I've learned to really be in tune with what I'm hearing. And I think if you get used to that piece of equipment, it can be super beneficial, especially in a place like Shane's, because it was so audible. There was so much going on the recorders. It was like a gold mine as far as, it was like real-time interaction. But, if we had to play it all back all the time, you're not going to get that interaction. And so that's one of my favorite pieces of equipment. I really like the SB7. I haven't got the new model, but it looks pretty cool.
SP11, yeah.
I guess, whatever it is, with all new features and everything else, I'm sure. SP7, I think, is a really cool device. And then we had an old school ghost box. That's what we were using down at Shane's at the time. That preceded the SP7. But, man, some of the stuff we got coming out of that ghost box just would make your skin crawl. It was just crazy. But, yeah, it was. Everything was very audible, and I enjoy the audible side of things. Video is cool, and I've got some great people that do most of my camera work because, like I said, just by nature, I'm just not much of a cameraman. I try, and I've got a vision. Because one of the things that I do want to do is I want to make documentaries. I want to take these projects and turn them into really good, in-depth documentaries that people can really learn something from. But again, I'm still polishing my camera skills. But I've got great friends that I work with that are top notch when it comes to that. So I kind of leave a lot of that to them. A lot of the gadget work is mine.
So you're planning on, am I hearing this right, that you're wanting to make your book into a documentary? Is that correct?
Well, I don't see this. Well, I don't see this one, this particular book happening that way. We did collect a lot of video down there, but because we don't have access to the house at this point, it really wouldn't work out. But the location that I'm working on, my second writing project, we are laying down tons and tons of film as well, and so it's going to take, I don't even know how long to go through just to kind of piece it all together, but the story is amazing, and it gets more amazing every time I go. I would like to turn that into a documentary for sure.
Well, awesome. That sounds cool. So your craziest experience besides the one that you've had in the book, other than that, what would be your craziest experience that you've had?
Well, I guess outside of the main story, one of the things we were going to this other place at the time. We kind of were juggling a few places at the same time. We were working on Shane's house. We go to this place called Hans Mill. It's kind of an abandoned. You'll probably find it on a registry of ghost towns. Although all it is now is just basically a field, and it's right next to the riverbank and all that. But we've had some pretty outrageous experiences there. It's like once the sun goes down, the place just has a whole new feeling, and it kind of comes to life. There's actually a picture. I need to put this picture up, like on my Facebook page or something. I don't really present a lot of stuff that we collect to the public, just because, to be honest with you, I like to use what we collect, to put these things together, to write about, to work documentaries. But this one picture in particular was so cool. There was this huge log that went across one riverbank, or one side of the riverbank to the other, and I just kind of was walking across it, and I had walked across it a couple times, although it was pretty narrow. I guess I kind of just lost my mind and, was doing the Indiana Jones thing. And Jason, one of my coworkers, snapped a picture of me while I'm on this log, and I kind of had paused, and I told him, I don't feel right. I've been across this thing a couple of times. Like, all of a sudden, I'm just kind of frozen, and I don't feel comfortable right now. And he started snapping pictures, and we were going through the pictures after we had left there that night, and immediately when he was kind of zipping through them, I stopped him, and we went back, and there's this face that's, like, transposed right here with mine, and it actually grays out this side of my face. And you can see all the features. You can see a nose and a chin and even a hat, like an old, like almost like a farmer type hat.
Right, like a brim hat.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can see all the features of this face. And like I said, I had just felt something wasn't right. And it was almost like I could feel whatever this thing was. And my K2 meter was going off at the time. That was pretty cool. There's been a lot of things. Another house we worked at, just kind of feeling that first burst of energy. The place in question seems like 9 out of 10 times is always the basement. So we were heading down into the basement, and I'm opening the basement door, and it almost seemed like the floor just like bum rushed right up at me. This energy just kind of just came over me like a wave. And, when that sort of thing happens, it seems like that's fairly common with me. I don't know if people have a tendency to kind of experience the same type of stuff. But it seems like energy bursts and things like that, when it's coming right at me, or if I come into something that's really energetic, I feel it, and I feel it hard, and that freaked me out pretty bad. But yeah, and again, I have to kind of keep a couple things under wraps, because I will be writing about certain things here in the near future, especially down in Oklahoma. Some of the experiences down there. If you don't believe in certain things, get in touch with me. I'll take you down there. And it's almost like a paranormal dictionary from A to Z. You'll probably find something on every single page down there. It's insane.
So I'm not going to try to get the name of the area. Could it be a fort somewhere in southern Oklahoma?
Now, I can tell you, it's actually the place I've been working is with a couple of brothers. They are Cherokee, so it's in the Cherokee area in the northeast corner of Oklahoma.
Okay.
I've been working just outside of, I guess technically it's in Tahlequah, and so we're kind of right in that area, northeast Oklahoma, kind of where Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, they're all kind of meet down there. And I've worked with Russ down there, and I've been to the Bordello. I actually was at the Bordello before it was refurbished. The place was down. Oh, it was old, and it was like the picture of a haunted house.
Yeah.
And so we were there several times. I haven't been back since it's been refurbished, though. I'm kind of working with him, maybe setting something up here. But yeah, this place down in Oklahoma is just nuts. It's right up in that northeast Oklahoma area. And part of my research, and I'm going to write in depth about this too, in my next project, because I really don't touch on it too much in this one because it wasn't too relevant to Shane's story. But I do a lot of ley line research. I believe there's a whole lot of significance that goes into actual ley line intersections. And so far, again, it's almost 100%. Actually, I could go so far as to say it is 100%. When I'm going to these locations, I'm doing some research on these intersecting points, and next thing I know, I'm in northeast Oklahoma, and I'm just blown away, completely blown away.
So how do you find the information for these ley lines if people are interested in looking at that? Because, my researcher, he does everything, but we don't do ley lines. So
it's tricky. It's very
yeah,
tricky.
I'm sure it is. So can you give us a little hint on how to do that if we wanted to get into that just to for giggles,
Well, the details are forthcoming. I'll say that.
Okay.
I can't give away all the secrets just yet. To be honest with you, I've worked real closely with a gentleman who's from Hawaii. I just kind of happened to track him down several years ago, and he has done so much work putting this type of stuff together. And he's just this amazing guy, and I believe in the work that he does. Now, he obviously is doing this research for different purposes, but it just kind of fell into place. But anyway, like I said, I can't give away all the details. It took me 4 years to track that information down, and I was determined to do it, and I did it, and it's been something, I feel blessed having found him, and it's this incredible database, basically. And so I've got this notebook that has every single state, every single intersecting point, and I start doing research in the surrounding towns, and it just takes you right exactly where you need to be. It's crazy.
That is wild. So you do believe in ley lines and obviously vortexes, of paranormal activity goes along with that, is it right?
Definitely. And it's crazy because so many times history finds itself right in the middle of these intersecting points. I mean, I'll tell you this place down in Oklahoma, it's one of the biggest points of intersection. There's actually 8 intersecting lines through this area down there, and it's actually right where the Trail of Tears ended. And so this very strange, almost highway of energy just kind of ends right there. And this tragic history that's just, one of the worst things that's ever happened in the history of this country. And that's part of what I'm going to be writing about, is this tragedy, because it's not very well taught in schools. It's kind of one of those things the government sort of sweeps under the rug. It never happened. Nothing to see here,
They didn't do anything wrong to the Indians. Come on, man.
Not at all. Not at all. You know.
What? Yeah.
You know, you can freeze or you can have this smallpox-infested blanket. Totally up to you. Yeah. But yeah, and so that place has really touched me deep, and the people I've worked with have been incredibly gracious. It took a while to build some trust, you know, and rightfully so. And I couldn't blame anybody down there. But they've been they're almost like family to me now. And I cannot wait to write that story. It's going to be on a much bigger scale, obviously, than just a house, that we've got on this particular book. But, there's just so much to learn down there, and the people are amazing. The air feels different. It's hard to explain. But I cannot wait to get going on that story. And like I said, I promise you, the ley line information is coming, and I really think it's something that could benefit everybody. I really do, especially if you're looking for some type of real progress here. You know, where do we need to be and why, and just test it out. And it's a pretty cool thing.
We've got somebody in the northeast corner of Oklahoma, only a few miles from the state line, says that's in my neck of the woods. How interesting.
Okay. Well,
so
beautiful.
That's one of your future plans, is to write this next book. And what else after that? You just continue to research and educate us on what we need to know about ley lines. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I certainly want to spread the knowledge. You know, one thing I don't like is a lot of people do hoard information in this field. I think that's counterproductive. And to be honest with you, if I wasn't actually in the process of putting an outline together to tell this story, I'd go ahead and just lay it all out for you right now. But I want to be able to really tell that the way it needs to be told.
Right.
And so that's something that I'm just looking forward to getting out there. Hopefully in the next year to 2 years, it'll be out there. But I've actually got another I've got another case that I'm going to be putting together. I can't really get into the details on that one. It's basically what I want to do is I want to take our investigative methods and see if it can help with an unsolved murder, is what I want to do. And I've got this, again, as we typically work with, this very tragic story of a triple homicide that happened years and years ago, and it's a cold case. And so I really want to couple all the information that's been gathered over the years with the investigations. It's all public record. And I want to get down there, and I want to see exactly what our equipment and what our methods can do to maybe bring in another name, you know, or bring something to light. One thing in particular is if there are people still trapped in this location because of the trauma or whatever it might be, I would do everything I possibly could to set them free. I mean, you know, 40 years in who knows where, I can't even imagine, you know, and that's, I think, what we should all strive to do, is not just help the living, but if possible, help the dead as well. And so, yeah, and that's a project that I've been doing research on that case, and that, you know, all the details on that. I've been just kind of reading about it and studying it for the last couple of years. I have not hit the field to investigate it as of yet, because it's a very difficult place to access. But again, you've got to build that trust. And I think once we establish that, which everything's kind of in motion, again, that's why I can't really talk in detail about it, because there's just, I'm trying to build that, you know, your secret safe with me sort of thing.
Right.
Which it definitely is, and certainly I'll never use names. I had to change a lot of the names in this book because they didn't sign off on me using their name, and right. I don't even specify the actual town that Shane's house is in, because it's such a small town. It's kind of like the whole little town knows that's the haunted house, and so I didn't really put that out there. But again, I think the knowledge and the education part of it, and the story itself. I mean, I don't think the story suffers at all. But anyway, I've got that other project that is kind of coming down the pike. So I'm keeping busy, always looking for different projects. Seems like most of my big projects I have to drive 4 or 5 hours to get to. So if I can find something near Kansas City, that would be okay too.
Well, I hope that once that Russell does set something up with you at the Bordello, that I'll be able to make that, because I've been taking groups up there to the Bordello, because I also work with Lisa Martin, who's up in the Joplin and Carthage area. Okay. And so I set things up with her at one of her locations, and then I set them up at the Bordello because, Russell actually was a consultant for Shadows on 66, which was a documentary that Chip Coffey and the Kling brothers and I worked on with him and Julie, and they were a lot of help with that as far as information and things like that. And that's exactly where I met Russell, and that Bordello not only holds a special place in my heart, but I can kind of understand. As crazy as it sounds, how some single moms can be driven to extremes to take care of their families. But Nancy gives a whole new meaning to that. But I hope that we can be at the Bordello at the same time, because that place is an amazing place.
It is. It's fun. And at the time he had access to a couple other places down there. I think one of them has since been kind of closed off. But yeah, it's a cool little area. Just that whole Route 66 thing is just so cool. Yes. And that's part of what led me down. A friend of mine, Jeremiah Norwood, he was actually the head of the Kansas affiliate for Everyday Paranormal. And he and I just clicked real fast. We wanted to work together. We were talking and everything else. And after kind of the aftermath of this story, The House Where Evil Lurks, I was just kind of getting that itch to get back in the field, because frankly, this story, it put me out for several months. I wasn't sure if I wanted to move forward doing it. I was kind of just gathering myself and saying, can I handle this if that's what's going to come my way? But I finally got to the point where I said, screw it, let's just get back there. And Jeremiah and I actually had lost my job. I got laid off. And so I was like, okay, well, I got nothing better to do. And so I got in touch with Jeremiah. He happened to have a week off. And what we did is we put together this road trip paranormal thing where our first stop, night one, was Galena. And, we went down to the Bordello, a couple other places. And then the second night was this Oklahoma place. And that place just stole the show completely. So I was like, okay. And that's how I got kind of hooked into this place. And we went all the way down to New Orleans. We stopped at 5 or 6 places on the way. We stopped at 3 or 4 on the way back. We conducted about 10 investigations in 10 days. It was nuts. And by the time we got back, it was like we had forgotten what sleep was. We get 2-3 hours a night in this shady little motel somewhere that was $30 a night, but we had a blast. And so anyway, that kind of got me going on this Oklahoma place, and Jeremiah also helped out in Shane's case as well. But yeah, Russ actually put us up for a couple nights while we were on our little road trip. So he and Julie are, again, they're just like family. They're great people. So yeah, that'd be cool. I'm always down to go down to Galena. It's a good time.
Yeah, and the people are so freaking nice there. It's like, besides one crazy person that we're not even going to talk about, but, other than that, the rest of them were so freaking nice. And I was like, wow, there's always got to be one. You know what I mean? There's always got to be one to ruin it.
I think I've heard about that person.
I'm sure you have.
Well, like I said, I try to keep a lot of my work away from the mainstream. I can't say that I've really, to this point, I haven't participated in any conferences or anything like that, which, not to say that I might not in the future, but I just see so much distraction that just takes away from the actual work. I don't need all the negativity, and I don't need all the kind of tit for tat, that sort of thing. A lot of that goes on. It's unfortunate. And like I said, I get to know people before I work with them, and I don't work with just anybody. Right. And I think everybody should take that approach. Just be careful with who it is that you're associating with, because you need to really get to know these people, because you're out there. You've got to trust them. They've got to trust you, and really you've got to work well together to really find some sort of progress. Exactly. And so that's kind of my approach, is careful. Just I I tread lightly. That's all.
Proceed with caution.
Very much so. Yep.
Exactly. So what are your where is a bucket list place? Like, tell me a couple of places that you just want to go to so bad and you have not been able to yet.
You know, I have this idea for a documentary that is sort of my Mecca project, and that would actually be basically the four corners of Ireland. And my last name's Callahan. I've got the Irish running in me. And I've been there, but I haven't spent enough time there to really soak it in. And I want to do like a 10-day trip, and I want to cover that island, you know, one side and the other, up and down. And I'd like to film the whole damn thing, and I'd like to make a documentary out of it. Because some of the places over there are just insane. You know, I've never investigated there, but just the stories you hear, that would be one place for sure. And I'd also like to go back to England. Chillingham Castle would be one that I'd really like to investigate. And I think anybody, you know, I guess I can't say anybody would want to, but there's a little, I think you've probably seen it or heard about it, this little island out in Italy somewhere.
Pavelia?
Yeah, and everybody kind of cringes, like, is that a little much? And I personally would love to pitch a tent on Pavelia and see what I can find out for a couple of days. I think. I think you do. I may be proven wrong on that one too. But yeah, you know, just like everybody, going overseas is always fun. And I spent some time overseas when I was in the Air Force, and just the culture and the history and everything is amazing. And really here in the States, there are a lot of like famous places I guess I'd like to check out. I'd like to go to Alcatraz, places like that. I've never been to the Villisca House. I'd like to check it out sometime.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've also heard some people just say, well, nothing happened. And then I've some people say it's the most active place I've ever been.
I can't say nothing happened. All I can say is that it was interesting from the get-go. And I had personal experiences. Me and the co-founder of my team were standing at the top of the stairs, and the stairs are like this big. So it was amazing how Brad and Barry could get their big selves up there. You know, I was like, they had to have went sideways.
Yeah.
You know? So we were up there standing, and me and Penny were facing each other right at the foot of the parents' bed, and we hear footsteps coming up the walkway and all the way up and up the stairs. And we just kind of looked at each other like, okay, well, we have nowhere to go, so I take that window and you go out this one. And, you know, it was just, and then the whole, we had activity from the children, communication with the children from pretty much the first 30 minutes we were there. Periscopes going off, pyramids going, I mean, just the whole 9 yards, REM pods, it was insane. And then the actual personal, me seeing the shadow figure coming out of the attic. And I've seen a doppelganger before, but I've never seen an actual shadow figure. And I thought that my eyes were playing tricks on me. I said, oh, that was a car, you know. And then I saw it the second time, and I went, that wasn't a car. And then I got all mad. So that place has got a lot of emotion, and you can almost, now I know sometimes it may not, you know, just like any location, may not be active one night, you know, may just be chill, you know. But that night it was, and it was almost like when you walked in, you could feel the heaviness. You can feel it, you know. But it was at a very emotional place. I got mad, I got really sad, and then I got mad again. The protective mama thing came out. So it's a good place to go, but you know, like I said, there's a lot, you know, like you were saying, there's a lot of commercial big name places, but
I don't spend a lot of time with that, really. I mean, again, I wouldn't turn down the opportunity to investigate all these places, but at the same time, I'm also not going to write a $500 check either. And I think a lot of times some of that goes, I understand, you know, bringing in some money for the upkeep of a place or whatever it might be, and I'm completely on board with that. I also think that there's too many places that take advantage of people, and so I'm careful about that. Really, one thing that I would recommend to anybody that wants to get into investigating is find a book about ghost towns in your area. There's tons of them, I guarantee it. And they all became ghost towns for one reason or another. Most of them are not good reasons, you know? And so chances are, go check it out. That's how we found Hans Mill. And it turns out Hans Mill's a great place. I mean, it's very serene and peaceful, but at the same time, it'll scare the hell out of you. You know, it's like at nighttime, that place gets very, very creepy. And we've caught some weird, nasty EVPs out there. But yeah, go find a book on ghost towns and have fun. You know, be careful because you don't know what you're going to run into. But that's what I like to do. You know, to me, I prefer to get the basics and the history, and then, you know, I don't need someone telling me that the ghost of so-and-so lives in this room because we've all been through it 300 times, you know?
Yeah.
I'd like to go into that building that used to be something and find out what the hell's in there. So
yeah, not pre notion, you know, in your head. And the thing is that my deal is now, these, you know, I'm thinking to myself after, you know, so many investigations, and you go with a lot of teams, and they all ask the same questions to the spirits. The spirits are probably going, "Oh, Jesus Christ, here they come again with this same crap. Who's your name? What's your name? What year did you die? What did you die from? Blah, blah, blah." You know, and they get so sick of hearing it. So I don't care. I mean, it's good to know that I'm talking to Billy Bob, you know, or whatever your name is. That's great. What I want to know is, what is it like on your side? What are you seeing? Do you get to see your relatives when you die, or is that just some hot air blown up our butt, you know, to you know, make us feel better? You know, these are the questions that I want answers to. You know, like I said, there's nothing I can do about so-and-so who died in 1939 from, you know, being burned to death or shot in the head. I just want to know the questions that we're all looking for answers for. What is it like on the other side? What is it that you see? You know, tell me that. That's what I want to know. So what kind of questions do you ask them? Do you ask them some sort of similar questions, or?
Well, you know, I think it really depends on the place. I think just, you know, if I'm working in somebody's home, obviously they're going to be questions based on information that I've been given, or history that I have dug up, you know, whatever it might be. You know, in Shane's case, I needed to know why something felt the need to physically harm and attack and antagonize a guy with such a disability. You know, and again, that's what kind of set me off, was knowing that something this powerful and this mean would come after somebody that can't hear, you know. And so if he couldn't hear it, it made itself known in other ways, by physically coming after him, and he'd see things and things like that. And so to me, it really depends on the situation. Now, if I'm just in a random place and I've read up on some history of a location or something like that, yeah, you know, you want to find out who, how many, but at the same time, like you said, put a little personal twist on it. Do you know my name? I'm always interested. Does anybody here know my name? And I'm actually very careful not to use my name until we're in the middle. You know, I try to keep names kind of quiet until we're very well into the investigation, because you'd be so surprised how many times I have just almost immediately heard my name, and that fascinates me to no end. Like, how in the hell can you possibly know my name? Why am I getting EVPs with my name? It's not, you know, most super common name, and so when I pick it up, it seems relevant. And then you're also narrowing down whether something is intelligent or if it's something that's just there, you know, if it's more residual. And so I a lot of times, you know, I do sit down before I go anywhere to investigate, and I'll put an approach together in my head, and I'll say, you know, this is the information I need, this is what I want to get. But again, in someone's home, I think that needs to be geared towards, and again, this is just my opinion, everybody can, you know, go at it as they please. But I would personally try to incorporate a lot of the information that the homeowner gave me, their complaints or whatever it is, what they've seen. You know, hey, I need to see this too. Or what would make you physically harm a man that has a disability for no good reason? He's not antagonizing you. You think this is your house. If this is your house, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that, because it's not. And so in that manner, like I said, my questioning would definitely vary. A lot of times I shoot from the hip, depending on the mood, depending on what I'm feeling at the time. Again, I've kind of started to develop this ability to just pay attention to my gut. And when I feel out of place or I feel uncomfortable, see, I have this thing that I get this pressure in my ears, almost like I'm on a plane and my ear needs to pop. And I've actually noted now, when I feel that, something is out of place. I mean, I'm not up in the Rocky Mountains investigating. And so when I get, for no good reason, I know that something is up. I know that the energy is up, and typically nothing good comes out of when I've had that feeling either. And so I'm kind of on guard, and I'm ready for anything, but I'll also adjust my questions accordingly. If something's getting into my head like that, making me feel that, I need to know why, and I need to know what the intentions are.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show, and I wanted to thank you so much for being on the show, and everyone needs to get your book. It's called The House Where Evil Lurks, A Paranormal Investigator's Most Frightening Encounter. So get Brandon's book, check him out on Facebook, and I thank you for being on my show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. You guys have a great night, and thanks to all the listeners. You can find me very easily on Facebook. I'm very interactive as best I can be. And there's going to be a lot of information coming down, so definitely check out the page. It's a lot of cool stuff coming.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks,
have a great week. Talk to you soon.
You too. All right.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll be replaying this next week because I'm going to be out of town, and we need to give Brandon another week of letting you know about his book because it's awesome. It's got great reviews already. This coming up, we have Phantom Fest. That's this Friday and Saturday, the 26th and 27th. Mississippi Parafest will be October 3rd through the 5th in Vicksburg, Mississippi. October the 18th is Beckham Spirit Fest, which is in Mineola, Texas at the Beckham Hotel. Then we have the Vampire Court of Austin. My friends down there are having a vampire ball in Austin, Texas, October 25th. Check that page out. It's called Romanian Nights. And finally, November 1st is History, Haunts, and Legends in Jefferson, Texas. You have to check that out. We have, I believe, 4 different places to investigate. And I would like to thank my sponsors real quick. Miss Hattie's Place in Belton, Texas. Galena's Murder Bordello in Galena, Kansas. And last but not least is NOLA Ghost Hunting Tours in New Orleans. They have just been made one of the top things to do when you're in New Orleans, so you got to check them out. Again, next week, this will be a replay of Brandon, and I hope you enjoyed it. Everyone have a good week. Peace out.
And anybody live, so it turned out okay. I think he's doing just fine.
Yeah, it's some of these experiences that some of these homeowners do have is just, it blows my mind. And as much as they put up with before they get to the point where they're like, okay, all right, I can't do this anymore. We just had kind of a weird case recently that it was some kind of a pissed off energy that looked like to be somewhat of a Native American kind of origin, and it was feeding off the kids in the house and causing all kinds of discern and anger and things like that. And so far, so good, after doing a cleansing and a blessing and a protection, on the house. I think that I'm hoping that it will hold. But sometimes, those entities like possibly you're talking about at this home don't want to let go of that property no matter what you do.
Yeah. We never got
Band-Aids.
Yeah, exactly. We never really got a chance to do much in the way of a cleansing. It's been very strange. A lot of odd coincidences, things like that it's almost like this thing has some sort of protection over it, and it basically owns the house. I've got this. There's a small part in the book, just an audio clip that I was going through all of our audio and video and everything after an investigation. And I had actually announced we're all leaving the house, and I kind of slammed the door behind me to make sure all the recorders picked it up. And within a couple minutes of us leaving the house, the place literally sounds like it's coming to life. Moaning and whispering and talking, things being dragged across 2 flights of floors, a water tank in the basement just sounding like it's getting punched. It was insane. And so it was almost like the house sort of took on its own energy. And it was a very intimidating place to be, for sure.
Wow.
That's for sure.
Yeah, well, so I don't want to give away too much of the book, but can you tell the audience a little bit about what started this whole thing and your experience? I know it was traumatic, but the things you're comfortable with talking about without giving too much away, in other words.
Yeah, for sure. Really, I was contacted via email. At the time, my group was involved in the Everyday Paranormal Network, and we were the Missouri affiliate. And I had friends in Kansas, Louisiana, all over the place. And Ken and Maria Lair, friends of mine that did the Everyday Paranormal Louisiana chapter, they had actually sent this person to me because they had found their website and contacted them, and obviously they were closer to me. So they kind of sent them to us, and I had spoken with who turned out to be the client's cousin. The client is actually deaf, and so he couldn't really communicate via phone. Unfortunately, I don't sign or anything like that. So Shane and I basically communicated via text message when I was down there at his house. And anyway, it got to the point where the activity in the home was so bad, he actually was hospitalized. He was attacked and ended up with a concussion. He ended up kind of basically being bum rushed by some kind of energy, and it knocked him back to the point where he knocked himself out. He got a concussion and everything else. So we got down there as quick as we could, and just wanted to do whatever we could to help him out. Unfortunately, it kind of turned out, and I couldn't really blame him. He ended up leaving the home. So there really wasn't a lot of absolute resolution in the home in this particular instance, which I do regret. But at the same time, he's very happy, very healthy now, and hasn't had any problems ever since he left. And so really that, to me, that helps me sleep a little better at night, just having a little bit of unfinished business in that house. But it's not a place that I'd really recommend.
Everybody, thanks for joining me. Selena Roane with Close to Death, and this is powered by Fear Paranormal. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been live, so I'm kind of excited. I got a really cool guest tonight that happens to be, we have a couple of mutual friends, which is kind of making it the smaller world than I thought before. But before any further ado, Brandon Callahan, are you with us?
I am. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining me. So Stephen LaChance and Russell Keeler and a couple of our mutual friends are kind of telling me that book you just wrote was pretty amazing. So before we get into that, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Brandon Callahan from Kansas City. I do have just kind of a smaller group of, I guess, acquaintances, friends, or whatever it might be in the paranormal community. Over the years, I've kind of, I guess, kept most of my work a little more on the underside of things, not really right there in front of the public. We mostly do, we do a lot of research on potential locations, hotspots, things like that. We also have worked in quite a few homes with families as well that needed us to come through and kind of see what's going on. But yeah, Stephen and I go way back several years, and Russ, I've worked with Russ a handful of times, and he could not be a nicer guy. And so he and myself, he makes an appearance in the book, to be honest with you. So yeah, it was a pretty intense situation, and one I felt definitely warranted writing about for sure.
Yeah, and your book is called "The House Where Evil Lurks," and then it's a paranormal investigator's most frightening experience. Is that correct? Encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah, encounter. And man, I'm telling you, just the title itself makes, I'm not a real big reader. I'll go ahead and tell you I haven't read it yet. Sure. But the title alone makes me want to read it, because if I get into a book like with Stephen's The Uninvited, that's the only book I've ever finished from front to back, which is like a major accomplishment at 45 years of living. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so ADD's a bitch. But anyway, so, but that's the first book I actually finished reading. So if it can grab me and keep me involved, then more than likely I can finish yours. So I'm hoping to get a copy of it so I can start reading it.
Awesome. Yeah, I really think you would. And really a big thing that I wanted to accomplish was kind of bringing the reader next to us during the investigations and setting up equipment, what we're experiencing, feeling, and everything else. Of course, there's some history behind the location, but really one of the big things I wanted to accomplish was whoever's reading the book can really just kind of feel the location. And I think it accomplished that on a lot of levels. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. It was kind of a difficult thing. A lot of the stuff in it were really hard to write about, to be honest with you. But the way it turned out, Llewellyn was the publisher, and they've been fantastic to work with. And so yeah, they've published Stephen LeChance several times, and he's kind of been right there with me, just kind of saying, here's what to expect and everything else. So it's been a real help. But yeah, overall, it's been a pretty crazy experience.
That kind of, I don't know if you know a guy named Josh Hurd, but he's up in that area as well. And he's had similar things happen to him and his team that have lasting effects. And that seems to be the case, just like with Stephen's case, your case, Josh's case. It's like a team goes in to investigate, and the entity kind of just jacks with everyone's life. And that kind of is what happened to you as well. Your team, they were each individually picked on in a different way. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. People were actually attacked while we were conducting investigations in the house. Part of the, I guess, not to give all the details away, but part of the climax of the book itself was myself being followed home. And there were several times, it was after each investigation, things in my mind got worse and worse. Sometimes after you leave a location and you've done your investigation, that energy can kind of stick with you for a few days. And after a few days, it wears off or whatever. It just kept getting worse. And so by the time everything kind of hit the fan, it was a pretty bad situation. And I wasn't sure what I had gotten myself into, or whether it was something I could get handled.
Right. Do you as a team, do you have a practice of possibly doing protection prayers before and after your investigations, or was that not part of your deal before?
I kind of leave everybody to their own devices. We've certainly discussed, whatever it is you need to do to be protected, you go right ahead and you do it.
Right.
I have my own practices, and unfortunately, literally one time, I got lazy about it, is the time that I paid for it, and I haven't forgotten since. But it was just one of those things where I, just in a rush or whatever to get down there, and as I'm walking into the house, something just felt wrong, and I noticed, I was like, okay, now, this